Harrison Price for Wednesday, December 4th, 2024, coming in from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. In this show, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Harrison alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Roderson, hitting switches, conducting things. We got a big show coming up after a big game in Minnesota. Boy, that was fun. We'll start with the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Moral victories. Oh, do you remember our years with moral victories?
Yeah, during losing seasons, you get moral victories.
Is there such thing as a moral victory this year for your Vancouver Canucks? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Vote at the Sick Harrison Price X and YouTube channels. I think you've foreshadowed your answer here.
Well, yeah, the very definition of a moral victory, or the very purpose of a moral victory, is to placate members of that team or members of the team's fan base in lieu of actual victories. But the Vancouver Canucks actually have actual victories. Ergo, they do not have the need for moral victories. They can take things out of losses. I mean, last night's game is a game of inches. Brock Besser hits the post at one end. They go back down the other and score the game winner. It's right there. They, in a parallel universe, they get the 2 points and they're celebrating. So, yeah, there's no moral victories this season for the Vancouver Canucks.
So, I agree with you on the strict definition of moral victories. 109-point team won the division in the regular season last year. We are well beyond the rebuilding, recasting teams of moral victories. That said, and Frank Corrado has a very interesting answer on this coming up on today's show. If players and coaches want to refer to the process and talk about how it was a good game by the process that just didn't go their way, that's to be expected, and I'm fine with that. I draw a distinction between that and a moral victory. Do you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To me, that's a broader... A moral victory is in isolation. The process is like an ongoing continuum throughout the season.
Yeah, again,
that's how I break it.
You can have learnings from a game.
Right.
But it doesn't mean it's a moral victory per se.
Do you remember the debates we used to have about moral victories? Do you remember that moral victory in L.A. that one year? They stuck up for themselves. They fought. They didn't go quietly into the night.
And that's all
we had. Super spicy show the next day. Some people just thrilled that the Canucks showed some fight. Some people dismayed by the fact that people were celebrating a loss.
When you're in one phase of a team, it's impossible to remember or think about it being in another phase.
Well, I was talking to Mike because Mike was telling me this morning that he went to a bunch of games during their payday, those years between 2009, 2012, 13, where they won a ton of games. And, I was telling him what our show was like in those days, in that
the 12th forward.
No, honestly,
a lot of debate.
They would lose a game and no one would be outraged because everybody saw the big picture and like, oh, well, yeah, we're going to drop something in the order of 20, 25 games this year. No big whoop.
But even as a post-game show guy, we'd be down to the 12th forward hasn't scored in 8 games. Is he a guy that you want on the playoff roster?
Is it time to scratch him?
Yeah.
Is it time to call somebody up and give them a try? Huh? It's time to see Victor Oreskovich there playing right wing on the fourth line.
Well, hey, there is one sort of thing I remember from the glory days, the 2009 to 2013 era, that I think is going to come up in the next couple of days is every time they drop the puck down the street, they freaking won the game. And that's not the case right now.
No. The home record is still poor and doesn't allow people to be blasé about victories. Because even the victories, Blake, in that era was like, oh, yeah, well, they won. They're expected to. Remember some nights, particularly against Edmonton, but a bunch of other Western Conference lesser lights at the time, too. Like, they'd play one period.
Yeah.
Or they'd play 10 minutes and come out with a win. Be like, the Canucks trailed 2-0 after 40, but you know what? They haven't played their best in their third period team. And, oh, look at that. Hank and Danny combined for 2 power play goals, and Burrow's got a winner.
Yeah.
Kessler found an empty net, 4-2. It's lease month at Surrey Mitsubishi. Leasing a car, better option. Lower monthly payments, flexibility of driving a new vehicle every few years, convenience of staying under warranty, minimal maintenance costs, plus avoid the long-term commitment and depreciation hit of ownership. This month at Surrey Mitsubishi, you can lease an Outlander PHEV 2024 for $182 a week. If you need a gas option, the Outlander Gas 2024 is yours for $105 a week. The Eclipse Cross, just $100 a week. And the RVR, only $87 a week. Plus, skate away with up to $1,000 winter tire credit and no charge 2-year maintenance package. And don't miss out on the $5,000 government rebate on the Outlander PHEV while it lasts. See dealer for details and term. All leases are OAC. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey, or surreymitsubishi.ca. We'll get to our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery, a 3-2 overtime loss in Minnesota against the Wild to complete the 6-game road trip 4-1-1, 9 points out of a possible 12 in a game that lived up to its billing. That was fast, that was physical, that was exciting, playoff-style game and test that we talked about and said it would be yesterday. That was really the first time this year where I felt like a springtime intensity to a Canucks game. Fair?
Yeah. It certainly felt like they were in a different league. Like it certainly felt like
good way to put it.
They're playing an elite league match tonight.
And like they played Edmonton. They played Florida, the defending Cup champions, albeit without their 2 big stars up front. But it's out of conference in October.
That's right.
The Edmonton game had some juice to it, but
also Floridian crowds don't exactly add to the
fair enough
mystique.
The Edmonton game on a Saturday night, that had some gravitas, but this one sort of tweaks something a little different.
Yeah, that's fair. Mm-hmm. And it was tightly contested, tight checking. We knew going in the goals would be at a premium, so there was a bit of that soccer mentality of that one goal really means 2, sort of thing.
Fair.
So I think all that sort of added to the mystique of what we saw last night, and it didn't. And my only question mark was, is it even really a fair barometer given the injuries, but also just given it was the 6th game of a 6-game road trip? Had the Canucks shot their shot for the road trip, and was this just going to be, did it have the potential to be ugly? And full credit to the Vancouver Canucks for not letting it get ugly, for them saving really their best till last, because their third period was their best period. And I think that to me, of all the results, never mind the fact they got a point out of it, the fact that they remained competitive right till the 60th minute, to me, that's the most positive sign of the whole thing, that this team is maybe a little bit better than we worried that they were going. Like, there was a worry with all these injuries. Mm-hmm. I think that they were going to go into a bit of a hole here. I think this team has proved themselves a little bit hole-proof.
Not that it was a moral victory, though. Right, Blake?
No, again, it was a learning.
Just
no, it's not.
Victory.
It's not. It's not. It's a learning that
I'm with you.
Maybe this team is the floor on this team is a little higher than we thought.
You talked the second half of last year so much about these tests, right? Like these playoff style tests. Like, it's a good test for us. We got to be in these sorts of games. We got to be comfortable being uncomfortable and all those things. That game had all that tapestry. It was a layered, textured game, including griping about officiating, which we'll get to here in a second. Road trip, they outscored their opponents 21-18. Power play clicked at 30%. Penalty kill was 80%. DeBrusk had 8 goals and 10 points. Hughes had 2 goals and 10 points. And Pettersson had 1 goal and 10 points. Lankinen 4-0-1 in his 5 starts on that trip. And it was 2 assists for Pettersson last night. Goals from Hughes and DeBrusk. Lankinen with 26 saves. We're going to hear from Petey here in a second. But first, because it was just last week where I said, there haven't been a lot of games where I've sat there and looked at my timeline and seeing all this complaining about officials this year.
Oh, my goodness.
The Ottawa game where Hughes gets ejected early for the hit on Josh Norris, probably the only occasion in the first 20 where there was uproar from Canucks Twitter. Well, officiating was an issue last night, and lo and behold, who worked the game, Blake? How about this? Our old friend Kelly.
But the good
Kelly
news is,
Sutherland.
The good news is, if you followed Mike Russo last night on Twitter, he was railing against Kelly Sutherland as much as the Vancouver Canucks fans were.
Maybe he's just a bad official.
Maybe he's just poor. Yeah.
The missed trip Kaprizov on Garland in overtime. I mean, I don't know how you swallow your whistle on that one. It prevents a breakout.
I think Shorty giggled at that non-call there.
Well, Dave did. DT did, certainly. So egregious. Now, the Eriksson Ek hit on Sherwood is more of a gray area for me. I saw a lot of people equating it to the Hughes-Norris hit, and that is incorrect.
It's shoulder to shoulder.
That one is perpendicular. It's shoulder to shoulder. Hughes, and we cited the rule last week after being edified on it, that when you see their numbers and the face hits the glass, that is in a different realm as the NHL. It's on ice officials see it. So this one was more front side or perpendicular, shoulder to shoulder. So it comes with a different set of variables, different adjudication. I have 3 questions about it. Number 1, and I haven't seen it frame by frame, does he leave his feet at the last minute? He certainly gets airborne, but sometimes that's the force of the collision. Number 2, does the right hand get up and into Sherwood's head? And then number 3, at what point do you call charging? Like, from what distance and at what speed are you going to say, okay, that's charging? You tell me. Because I'll say this, it was a hellacious hit from a big man on a not-so-big man. And Sherwood was absolutely shaking.
Sherwood also was crouching at the point of impact. Like, he was down low. I think he was trying to duck the hit a little bit, and that made it worse potentially.
So just take on the charging for me. Like,
I mean, I'd have to go look at it again for the charging standpoint to see when he stopped skating, how long that glides there for. To me, it was an unfortunate case of Sherwood just being extraordinarily low on impact, and so you're worried about the head, where the head hits the boards. If Sherwood's standing tall, and he's not a big guy, but even if he's standing tall when that hit happens, I think it's a big glass rattler. The thing is, when you get low, all that weight, you don't hit the glass, you hit more boards, and that's way more injurious.
Oh, and you could tell he was feeling it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of pain on the bench.
A lot less give in the boards than there is in the glass. So, again, he's a little higher, you get that glass flex, and I don't know if it's as bad.
And look, that's one that I can understand Canucks fans being upset about. If the jerseys are swapped, you're loving that hit from your team. Again, was it a charge? does he actually get him in the head with his right hand arm? And is there a slight leaving of the feet at the last moment?
To me, I honestly, when I saw that game in real time, or that hit in real time, I just thought, that's unfortunate. But
when I saw it in real time, I
wasn't outraged though.
What a body check! No. When I saw it on replay, slowed down, I had more questions.
But you know what? Again, I go back to the line of scrimmage comparison. Like, it's hockey. On any massive hit, if you want to find infraction there, you probably can.
Yeah, and as you say, Russo was griping about some of the calls against the Wild.
Absolutely, including the
cross check,
the Myers cross check on Eck.
So let's hear from Pettersson here, because it's another multi-point game for him, and he moves into the top 10 all time in Canucks annals on that score. But he was bemoaning mistakes and his own mistakes in the postgame. Let's take a listen.
Like the battle, I think I ran a few minutes in the second period when I think they really had pressure on us. Other than that, I think we really liked our effort. I think we did enough to win, but a few mistakes by our line and me in the D zone that give us we give up the lead.
You say a couple mistakes by you. Anything you're just looking maybe more specifically to clean up heading back home?
Yeah, I mean we have a 2-1 lead, and then their goal. I missed a block, and then when I missed my block, I screened Lankinen to even see the puck. So just small details, but yeah.
You know what?
Yeah. Well,
if you're Felix Auger-Aliassime and you're taking on the 120th ranked player in the world, you expect a lot fewer unforced errors than you do when you're taking on a top. You're taking on a top team. They're going to force you into a lot more errors, So, but overall, I don't think it was error plagued by the Vancouver Canucks.
And if you're facing Novak, you'll make a lot of unforced errors just out of pure fear.
That's right.
Let's get to a couple of our YouTube comments here. Nello, moral victories was so Travis Green. That era is over. Time to move on. Yes. And our old friend Travis Green is under some fire in his new gig. Not much of a honeymoon period.
No.
With the Senators. And the Blazers fan, 22, I didn't mind the missed Sherwood penalty. I thought he was a little low going into it. But, man, the Minnesota player literally slashed the legs out from underneath Garland. Yeah, Kaprizov. Who ends up scoring the game-winning goal.
Do you think officials have a higher threshold in overtime? Do you think they just,
I
wanted to let it play out?
Yeah, I do. Mm-hmm.
And
look, officials had a higher threshold throughout the league last night when we get to the Edmonton-Vegas game.
Yeah. I mean, and the funny thing about overtime, too, is...
And the other thing, Blake, like the officials, Vancouver, Minnesota, they know that's a heavyweight game. Vegas, Edmonton last night, another heavyweight regular season game. I think they're more apt to let those teams play.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Overtime was a good one, by the way.
Oh, love it.
And it is funny. It is a bit punitive. Like, you get into the seesaw of odd man rushes, right? The one cardinal error is made, and then you get these back and forth odd man rushes, as we see in almost every circumstance in any overtime, where if you're the team that's got that odd man 2-on-1, you better score. Because it means they've got two guys behind the play.
That's what I love about it.
It can swing the other way, and you're in trouble as well.
That's what I love about it. The breakneck back and forth, and I love the conundrum of when to shoot, when to make your attempt on goal, knowing as soon as you do, if it doesn't go in, you're probably on your heels with guys coming at you the other way. To me, it might be the single best thing that Gary Bettman has done for this league and this sport was institute the 3-on-3 overtime. I can't think of anything that I have approved of more in this commissioner's lengthy and tedious tenure than going to 3-on-3 overtime. I remember when it first started, Blake, and we were like 2 months into it, and we called Scotty Bowman down in Tampa and said, Scotty, we want you to come on and talk to us about 3-on-3 overtime and explain how you would go about the strategy and the tactics. And we opened up and said, Scotty, what do you think of 3-on-3 overtime? And he said, I don't know how you can love it. Like, that's an old school guy. I mean, it was in his 80s at the time. And, because so many were talking about, it's a bastardization, it's not hockey. And Scotty's like, absolutely love it. I have so much fun sitting back here and watching it. And he told us in that conversation, it's all about possession. And all these years later, you see that in practice now, to the point where now people are complaining about the overtime being a little too much of a hold on to the ball, puck possession, shot clock.
So, but now that they have, I think we've found sort of the happy level of the regroup in overtime. Because they figured that out, if you're the league, you say, okay, you figured out that the regroup is the better way to go here en route to.
And it was a smart play by the Canucks last night to regroup, get two guys changed.
Well, which was the overtime on this road trip?
I think it was Hughes holding on to the puck, and I want to say it was Suter and somebody else who changed, but...
no, but there was an overtime earlier on this road trip where it was 3.5 minutes of Canucks possession before the other team touched it.
There's been a lot of overtime. Yeah. Buffalo, Detroit, it's been a lot.
I forget which one it was, but
they all run.
Should you go to 7 minutes? Just because we know the regroup? No. To avoid the shootout? No.
I'm fine with 5. Look, there's not a ton of...
But you might, on the whole...
You may get there.
You might save time...
Mm-hmm.
And it's a better product than watching a shootout, in my opinion.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah, I hear you.
You do risk...
If you can prove to me that it's going to bring a quicker conclusion...
Yeah, that's what would be the argument, yeah. Because you got to scrape for the freaking shootout, and then...
The dry scrape.
Freaking dry scrape. And then back and forth 3 times. I mean...
We once banned dry scrape from the show. Do you remember that, though? Like, people want to talk about dry scrape. I'm like, over my fucking dead body, are we going to be talking about dry scrapes? Like, I can't think of anything more boring, more tedious.
No one wanted to talk about the dry scrape.
No, like, we would bring people on when overtime was new, and they would talk about the dry scrape. Please. Okay. Hoaglander played 13.5 minutes last night.
Lo and behold.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of notable shots on goal,
Indeed.
too.
Looks a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Still didn't get on the score sheet, but looked a little better.
That second late shot might have been able to do better there. A little bit of a default shot. I think he could have been a little more creative there. But, I mean, hey, he's doing something right to get the trust in a big game like that, to get the trust of the coach. Like, that's right. That's not 13.5 minutes versus Columbus.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, you were stapled against Buffalo.
Yeah.
And Detroit. So to play, and he played more than double what he played in, was it Buffalo where he played the 628? Yeah. Good sign. Couple shots, block shot, a hit. So a step forward game. He's a guy who moral victories apply to right now.
Right.
There's a moral victory for Nils Hoaglander.
Individual, micro.
Last night. Let's hear from Tocchet. He was, for the most part, pleased. There's an interesting comment here within. Here's Coach.
We just played a solid game. I mean, the guys are doing a good job blocking out noise, and we're just doing we're just moving along every game. I like the attitude. I thought the last day we had some good video. Guys were engaged. They were asking a lot of questions, so it was good. It's good to get home though. What is it? 9 points out of 12. It's a tough trip.
Yeah. He basically said, other than a 5 or 6 minute span in the second period, he liked the whole game. The guys are doing a good job blocking out the noise. You're on the road. There's a lot less noise on the road.
And literally no traveling media.
Yeah.
So if they're hearing noise, they're going out to find the noise.
Is that Miller noise? Is that Hronek noise? Is that Demko noise?
I mean, there's no Demko noise. I think it has to be the Miller stuff.
Okay.
But again, there's no reporters on the trip.
Yeah.
So
like everyone is either a rights holder or in-house media.
Yeah. And even on the right shoulder, it's just Ian.
Yeah.
So
I guess, and Ian's not going to skewer them. We know that. But, I mean, I guess they would have picked up some Canadian media at the front end of the trip in Ottawa, but, like, are the Buffalo and Detroit guys?
But there wasn't a lot
Right
of noise at that point.
No.
Like, all this Miller stuff has been recent.
Well, there was
when they've been
Miller
in the
noise
States.
the Miller noise had started, but
Yeah.
well, he had taken his leave of absence.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, but
All right.
none of this chatter.
So the Canucks yesterday afternoon with the update on Filip Hronek and acknowledged that he had a lower body procedure. Do we have the graphic there, Mike? I think we have the graphic. Did I not send it to you? My bad. Alvin underwent a successful lower body procedure and will not require surgery on his upper body injury. Be out approximately 8 weeks. So a few things here. Number one, if it is an injured shoulder, and we suspect it's an injured shoulder, shoulder surgeries are massive rehabilitations. Very good chance that shoulder surgery, and I'm saying that slowly.
Oh, my God. It's the hardest thing.
Ends your season if you're Filip Hronek. Also a good chance, or, a chance, shouldn't say good, a chance that surgery may still be required on that shoulder. Oftentimes you will see that with athletes and shoulder injuries. They try and push through it, or they rest it for a period, and then eventually they realize or are told, look, you can play through this, or you can rest up on this and get back and play this year, but eventually it's going to need surgery. He may have to play through some pain when he does come back, and that would be, the end of January. Sounds like the end of January, maybe at the earliest. And, of course, last year we saw, and we think it was an elbow injury, hampered the same arm. That hampered his effectiveness. Filip Hronek was not the same player in the second half last year and through the playoffs that he was during a splendid first half of the season. So I'm not surprised by this, other than that he had a lower body procedure, but that tells you he was playing through something else. And it makes an awful lot of sense that if you're going to rest the shoulder for a couple of months and you got a lower body procedure that, the rehabilitation, the recovery time from that is within the 8 weeks, and it sounds like it will be, then that's just smart. But the Canucks are going to have to play now without their number one right side defenseman and a guy who has been an absolute catalyst to this franchise turnaround that we saw last year. Where's the urgency now for you in terms of adding that top four defenseman?
I think if you're Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin, you keep it at the level that you had it, which is we're going to look, but we're not going to force it. The season is long. The guy that's not available right now that we like may be available in 7 weeks. And if we can get there to 7 weeks, that is a far better, more impactful player than whatever we settle on right now. I think that's going to be their attitude. I don't think they're going to acquire a player that they're not as high on, rather than waiting 3 to 8 weeks for a player that they love and think is a far superior player. Like, I don't think right now they're not in that place where they need to plug the hole for the sake of plugging the hole. And that's the beauty that winning now has given them. They can wait.
Yeah,
for their guy.
And if they do wait, and Canucks News Summaries with a instructive tweet on this, they can accrue cap space for the trade deadline with Hronek on IR. They would need to use a 22-man roster as opposed to 23. Needless to say, you want Miller and Demko back as soon as possible. With Demko back, Archer's Shilovs gets dispatched to the minors. And then he's talking about using 13 forward, 7 defensemen for accruing $1.36 million in cap space. So you'd be between $4 and $4.5 million at the deadline, playing with a short roster. Or you go LTIR. And it sounds like the Dallas Stars might be our most recent example of exploiting the LTIR loophole. Tyler Seguin going for hip surgery. Timeline there is 4 to 6 months. Now, I don't want to castigate Jim Nill and the Stars on the Vegas shenanigans with Mark Stone just yet, because if Tyler Seguin is on the far end of that timeline, 6 months means you're missing a couple of rounds of the playoffs. And I would think they would want him back for the playoffs. If they're saying 4 to 6 months just as some cover to exploit the LTIR loophole, well, that wouldn't surprise me either. But our buddy Cam Robinson, who joined us yesterday, said he was told, hey, look for a Malkin to Dallas trade this year if they can create LTIR space with Seguin, whose hip apparently has been bothering him for some time. In the Canucks world, they would not be able to maximize the LTIR overage to go over and above the cap by the entirety of Filip Hronek's salary because they're playing below the cap right now, but it would create temporary cap space. I say temporary because Hronek will be back in the regular season, so you have to account for him and his salary when that comes back. But it would create a temporary situation, Blake, where you could go out and add a more salaried player if you're so willing. And we have long talked about how this is all well and good and commendable, and everyone supports the idea of Patrick Allvin accruing as much cap space as he can prior to the deadline so that he has more wiggle room, he has more space to add players. They won against the last year. Weren't able to fit them cap-wise. That's all well and good, but the chances are over a long regular season, you're going to wind up with an injury to a high-salary player for an extended period of time, and the temptation of LTIR and going over and above the cap, which is how cups are won these days in Tampa and in Vegas, would always be there.
Yeah, it's, again, depends on the people that they see available. I mean, if you've got somebody in mind that you think is available now, then you go into LTIR for that player.
Yep.
You go and get them.
Yep. I think that's right.
But only they know who their highest
right.
on. And only they know really who's ultimately available.
Well,
There's always those trades where you're like, I didn't know he was available.
And also you got to have a plan at the back end of that too, right? When your guy's ready to return and suddenly you're no longer able to keep him on LTIR. So,
and again, we'll
monitor.
That's often an easier plan. Doing this is a lot easier when you got that guy on your roster right now that you don't fancy. When you've got Ilya Mikheyev on this, let's say Mikheyev's on this roster right now, then you go into LTIR, you acquire that defenseman that replaces Hronek, and you think, as soon as we're close to getting Hronek back, we trade Mikheyev. But there's no Mikheyev on this team right now. Like, who's the guy on the roster right now that you're going to jettison in the first week of February because Hronek's coming back? They don't have that contract right now.
Did we tell them about our friends at Yellow Dog and Neighborhood? We need to do that.
We do, and lots of exciting news these days around the fine folks at Yellow Dog, like the fabulous mix pack, the Box of Tricks mix pack. High Five Hazy IPA, 2 brand new brews called the Wonder Tropical IPA and the Liquid Neon Juicy Pale Ale, and then the limited release Ultra Color Amber IPA that they've taken out of the Yellow Dog vault. Go check it out now at your favorite liquor store.
The holiday season and mix packs, hand in hand, really.
Yeah. And as long, and what I like about this,
no mix pack at home.
No holiday beer in that mix pack, which is, because I hate holiday beer.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you so object to?
I don't like cinnamon in my beer or vanilla in my beer.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Teach their own.
Yeah.
Our buddy Patrick Johnson of the Province and Post Media, who will be on the show tomorrow, has gotten some comments from Jim Rutherford. And for some of you, not a moment too soon. Like, this was overdue. And Patrick asked Rutherford about the JT Miller trade speculation. And Rutherford answers, no, we are not, meaning trading him. We stand by him. Jim also sounded a little cranky. Quote, don't start making stuff up on someone in his situation. That's disrespectful. People that do this for fun or for a living just go back to making up trade rumors. I'm not sure I follow the logic. Don't go making up trade rumors on this player. Just go make up trade rumors on another player. I would suggest that Mr. Rutherford's quarrel is with one of his fellow NHL executives, Chris Drury of the New York Rangers, who is calling and asking about the availability of JT Miller. As Darren Dreger told us on Monday, so are others. Why? Because they're wondering whether you can put Humpty Dumpty back together again. That everything going to be well with JT Miller and the Canucks when he's ready for a return, if he's going to return, given that is still an unknown timeline. So,
but also, Matt,
it's other GMs doing their job, going, maybe JT Miller isn't long for the Canucks or the Vancouver market or wherever the case may be. But if he's available, I want to know. And when you have that number of GMs who are doing it with a player of JT Miller's stature, yeah, there's a pretty good chance that's going to get out into the public sphere.
But also, all was quiet on the Western frontier. There was no speculation about JT Miller's his reason for his absence or his trades in the last couple of weeks. There's been none. But there hasn't been. It wasn't until national shows started to bring this up, like Spit and Chicklets and others.
Well, no, but Arthur Staple brought it up in New York first. Like, he had the report last week, building off the Drury, everybody's available memo. But that's just saying, hey, they covered JT Miller.
And where does Arthur Staple write for? Writes out of New York.
Yeah.
Spit and Chicklets out of the United States. They're national personalities. This is not the local media trying to dig up stuff.
Fair.
And so when we react to the people with the greatest, like, hey, we got no problem saying Spin Chicklets is the number one hockey podcast on the planet.
Yep.
When they say something that is going to be heard and viewed by everybody that follows the Vancouver Canucks, we probably should address it. Mm-hmm. And so we're addressing it.
Yeah.
So Jim, take it up with guys that are coming out of the hockey fraternity. Chris Drury, Ray Whitney, and Ryan, wrong Whitney. Ray's a class act. And Paul Bissonnette. I mean, those are guys from your fraternity, not ours.
The other thing here is when there is a lack of information, there will be speculation. It's just always the way. Like, it's PR 101.
Yeah.
And hockey still doesn't seem to fully understand this, and I understand this is a sensitive matter with JT Miller and so.
Yeah, that's not a demand for information.
This is one of the scenarios where you simply can't provide more information. Oftentimes it's by choice, and frankly, to your detriment and frustration more often than not. But yes, this is one where they're not going to provide more information because they can't. Patrick reports the goal is for JT to get himself mentally right and that the ball is in his court in terms of a return. I mean, I think stood to reason.
Yeah.
The Four Nations face-off teams are upon us. Sweden and Finland have named. We'll hear the North American rosters later in the day. No surprises here. Elias Pettersson is one of the Swedish forwards. Kevin Lankinen makes it amongst the three Finnish goaltenders. We are awaiting mostly Team USA actually in this market because Miller, Besser, Hughes, Demko. I don't think Connor Garland has a chance, but he's put his best foot forward here early in this season. And for those wondering, yes, we anticipate they can take Miller and Demko and then just replace them if they're not ready to go in February. Although in the case of the U.S. crease, there are a lot of options there, and they may just look at it and say, you know what, we're okay. We don't have to, go to a goaltender who has not played yet this season. We'll see. Have you seen that leak out? I know Canada's has leaked out. Is the U.S. yet leaked out?
I think there are people that have strong inclinations on the U.S., but I haven't seen definitively. Incidentally, if you were already a little bit queasy about the Canadian goaltending situations, just seeing it now in ink, the other teams, like Sweden with Gustafsson, the goaltender the Canucks just faced.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Jacob Markstrom, pretty good. Linus Ullmark.
Not good this year, but
traditionally good.
Yeah.
And then you go to the Finns, who, as Mike Kelly just put out, have I think it was the 5th, 7th, and Lankinen 15th best goals saved above expected this season. So goals saved above expected. Finland's got 3 of the top 15. And those are the 3 keepers that Finland is bringing. And then, of course,
they do goaltenders. That's what they do.
And then we get to the United States where, again, find the bad goalie. Not finding one. You could go 5, 6 deep on the United States. And
the
you'd
United
be
States
okay.
is damn near who's waiting list for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
And if Russia was playing, my goodness, like, what are we doing here with the Canadian goaltending development?
Sorry, just waving. We got a mother-daughter team there in the lobby taking photos. Okay. World Junior rosters. Tom Wielander, Canucks prospect, made the Swedish team. Ulrichsen, the big forward, didn't. We had a good chat with Cam Robinson yesterday about Vilmer Ulrichsen, the year he's having with the Guelph Storm in the OHL, the fact that he's an absolute behemoth at 6'6", 240. He winds up not making the Swedish World
it's
Junior
too bad.
team. Too bad, because I think he would have been quite a fascination at the tournament in our nation's capital. Of course, Sawyer Minny, Canucks prospect, is amongst the defensemen vying for Team Canada. I see most people having Minio in. Being one of the...
Well, I think he's virtually consensus, I think.
Yeah. Okay. I watched the preview show with Mackenzie and Button yesterday. That seemed to be the opinion. I don't know about you, but after the Canucks game ended last night, I got to the Edmonton-Vegas game. And you all know my feelings about Vegas, and frankly, a lot of those feelings apply to Edmonton as well. I'm not sure there are 2 teams I root more against than the Oilers.
That's
and
fair
Golden
for me
Knights.
as well, yeah.
And yet, Blake, Edmonton-Vegas is probably my favorite NHL regular season game. It never seems to disappoint. It is heavyweight hockey, 2 really good teams with really good players. You could argue it's the best collection of forwards, and I understand the free agent signings, Skinner, Arvidsson, they haven't really panned out yet there in Edmonton. I understand that. But McDavid, Draisaitl, even if you want to go 3 deep to Nugent Hopkins, there's not many teams that can match forward quality with Edmonton. And for my money, Vegas is the best 1 through 6 defense core in the league. And I just find it really entertaining hockey when these 2 teams play. And even in a 1-0 game, as we saw last night with the Knights getting the edge and the victory over Edmonton, they played this game without a single penalty called. And I didn't watch close enough, and I missed the early part of the game to know whether it was simply a swallow the whistles game or if these 2 teams just played a damn clean game in the middle of the regular season. What I do know, and Jack Michaels and others dug up the stat afterwards, 1 goal, no penalties, had not happened in the NHL since 1944, 80 years ago, Blake. Leafs Chicago a 0-0 tie without a penalty called. That was fabulous hockey.
Well, and that's the thing is that normally you'd hear that and be like, well, it must not have been very intense. That sounds like a trap hockey game with no action and no
I'm not going to say
vibes.
it was a barn burner. Like, it was not batten down the hatches.
No, but there was some nice plays.
Oh, yeah.
There was some intensity.
It had
the crowd
some intensity.
was
The
into it.
Crowd was very much into it. Adin Hill, boy. It's too bad the Four Nations doesn't start tomorrow with the way that Adin Hill is playing in the Vegas
Ryan
goal.
Nugent-Hopkins has to score on that one off the right pad. The back check, you know me and my back checks, McDavid picking the pocket of Eichel with an empty net staring at Jack Eichel. He can't end it early. You thought, is that going to come back and haunt you? It was good. It's good drama.
No, I've long said Baltimore-Pittsburgh is probably my favorite game in the NFL just because of the physicality and the intensity of two division rivals. Frankly, the Seahawks-49ers at one point would have been in that category as well. Vegas-Edmonton, when they play, that is an out-of-market game that I will watch, that I will go out of my way to watch. And last night was no exception. And then lastly, just go down the highway. Actually, the game was in Vegas, but staying in Alberta. What an incredibly emotional and sad, but also comforting evening at the Saddle Dome in Calgary, where the Columbus Blue Jackets and Calgary Flames just so happened to be playing in home game number 13 for the Flames, matching Johnny's number. The home team wins 3-0 with the entirety of the Gaudreau family on hand. His father, Guy, came out to drop the ceremonial.
Oh, everybody came out to drop it.
But Guy drops the ceremonial first puck, and Sean Monahan is bawling.
Yeah.
The Columbus centerman, who, of course, was extraordinarily close with Gaudreau during their time in Calgary. Michael Backlund, who's the longest-serving Flame there also. The emotion rippling off everybody.
And Johnny's wife did a great job of the intermission
Meredith,
as well.
In the intermission to keep it together and talk about, going around Calgary, showing their families, because she said a lot of the time we were here, the family couldn't visit because of the travel ban and COVID and stuff like that. Going around, stopping at familiar stops in the city. Of course, Calgary, not the biggest market, so it's got that town feel to it. And then the winning dressing room with Guy speaking to the players and talking about how difficult it must be for you to play. We're emotional, but we don't have to play NHL hockey games. And Rasmus Andersson, who scored the game-winning goal, also in tears. There's a lot that goes on in hockey, and particularly in Gary Bettman's hockey. He's a very transactional person, and he's created a culture in the National Hockey League that is oftentimes without sentiment. And every time that you want to sort of give up on the sport and its culture, you get a moment like that I think re-inspires and just makes you feel better.
It's going to be interesting to watch Columbus over the next little bit, and of course the Canucks see them next. They're
here Friday.
They've had a bunch of these nights already, and they've had a really nice start to the season. And I've really been heartened, too, in particular for the home crowd. Go and look at how many times they've scored 5 goals for the home crowd right now. They are lighting it up back home in Columbus, which is great because the hometown fans deserve a pick-me-up when they are in town. And they've overachieved, I think, in the standings on the whole.
And Blake, you talk about the goals. Like, we sat there and go, where are the goals going to come from?
Yeah.
Like, when you're spending that much money on a winger who's
I think they've scored 6 times.
Goals.
I think they've scored 6 times, at least 3 times at home, which is unbelievable. But I am a little bit worried about now,
the emotional tax of all.
Yeah,
of this.
I think they had the win one for the Gipper attitude up until this point, but I wonder if
it's very hard to make.
Yeah,
it's hard. Such a long NHL season.
So I wonder if the bottom is about to drop off, or are they going to prove us all wrong here? We'll see, but. It may have been the start of that, I thought, last night with Calgary keeping them off the score sheet. We'll
Columbus
see.
9th in the league in goals scored right now at 84.
Yeah, who'd have thought?
Yeah, again, minus. Right. There's no replacing him.
No.
Right? Yeah. Let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Greta. Greta, a fantastic spot to catch all the games. Your steps from the stadium and arena will be there for Canucks Army viewing parties. Later in the season, they got the street food menu. Check out the Smash Burger and the arcade, an awesome air hockey table. Weekly drink specials. Greta, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar, let the games begin. We're going to talk to Frank Corrado here coming up. Frankie with some very smart stuff on all things Vancouver Canucks, the trip, the power play minus JT Miller, Filip Hronek, moral victories, and then the new head coach of the British Columbia Lions, the 28th head coach in the history of the franchise, Mr. Buck Pierce, the former Lions quarterback who is coming off a decade. I cannot believe he's been retired for a decade. Makes me feel so old. 20-year association now with the Canadian Football League for Buck Pierce. Because I can remember when he came on up, it was like, oh, and the third stringer BC has is pretty good too. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. They got Dickinson, they got Printers, and then the third stringer? Remember Obilovich. Remember Bob talking to Bob one day going, really like this kid Pierce that we have.
It's pretty good, Obi, yeah.
And he talked about how, and I said, well, what did you like about him, Obi? And he said, I watched his tape at New Mexico State, and his receivers were trash. And I said, you know what? That's a pretty darn good quarterback there if somebody could catch a cold. And sure enough, up he came, and the next thing you know, he's got spot duty, and the next thing you know, he's elevating because Printers is off to the NFL.
And the next thing you know, he's diving for the end zones head first. Buck, please, just preserve yourself.
And we reference it in the interview, you know, that the one halftime where he just takes an absolute licking in the first half. I forget who was against. And he's in the locker room, like bloodied mouth. Look at my mouth. Look at this blood. You know, and needless to say, got the attention of his offensive linemen and his teammates and locker room at large. So the repatriation of Buck Pierce as Lions head coach from Winnipeg, where he was the offensive coordinator. Look forward to catching up with a guy who gave so much to the Lions franchise as a player, and he talks about it. He has a certain belief about the way the game should be played, and he plans to institute it here with the Leos. Okay. Bet365 bet of the day time. And Blake did not come in this morning crowing about a victory last night. Does that mean that you finally had the winning streak snapped, or does that mean that winning is just so routine now, Blake, you don't need to spike footballs anymore?
It's finally over. My second, I remember I sort of threw out the Brock Besser one too. That one was very close on a couple of occasions last night. But no, I did not win last night. Alas.
Well, I did because I took Minnesota. So I'll take the honor here, first off the tee. As you know, Blake, I have a fascination all our years with Captain Greg Bell, West Point graduate, with Service Academy football. This is Army, this is Navy, this is Air Force. They don't throw the ball. Even Air Force doesn't throw the ball. The Army cadets are having their best season in 70 years.
How'd they do in that Notre Dame game?
They got destroyed.
Okay.
That's their only loss of the season. They're 10-1. They play for their conference championship Friday, and because they run that antiquated option offense where the ball is almost never in the air, so you don't get clock stoppages for incompletions, the clock is forever running.
Quickest games in the West.
Honestly, college football games usually are between 3 and 3.5 hours. Army games are like 2.5 hours. Like, tell Rob Manfred, here's how you shave time off a game.
Don't throw it.
So when you get 5 points with Army, that's getting 8 or 9 points in a regular game because it's just going to be so short, limited possessions. I'm getting 5 points with the Black Knights of the Hudson. So give me Army +5 against Tulane in their conference championship game Friday for God Country and the Long Gray Line.
I'm looking at the Thursday nighter, Packers and Detroit Lions. Packers coming off a nice win last week, but Detroit just -3.5.
Yeah.
Playing so well. And here's the other thing. I wouldn't mind Detroit putting a little doubt in the Packers' minds before they face the Seahawks. Mm-hmm. So there's some selfish motivations at play here. I'd like the Packers to be
Yeah.
A little reflective. So I'm going to hope for as well the Detroit Lions to do that. Take the Lions -3.5.
Yeah, the Packers won 3 in a row here. In fact,
Yeah.
their last loss was to Detroit.
They need to be sent back down to earth. Detroit can do that.
Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Frank Corrado coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center.
It's a nice Nation Gear hat you've got on right
Yes,
there.
indeed it is.
Matthew, if you want to look as resplendent as Matthew Sekeres does right now, or maybe you think you can one-up him in a better color, now's your time. NationGear.ca. The Black Friday sale continues all week long. Head over there for some of the classics. There's also a new My City collection that's dropped for all of your Nation Gear wants. So even if you've got like family in Edmonton, somewhere else, you can buy the Nation Gear for their team, if you will, their market. And it all works. So spend over $200, you get free delivery as well, free shipping. Don't wait on the sidelines long, though. All this fun savings lasts only the week. NationGear.ca.
And as we know, if you fancy that hoodie, it is a very, very large hood, as JPAT modeled and demonstrated.
But a
for
snugger
us.
size.
Yeah.
I'm not always an XL. I'm an XL here, if that helps, folks.
Okay. Frank Corrado is the TSN hockey analyst, a former Vancouver Canuck. He joins us on Wednesdays. How are you?
I'm good, boys. Just debating what piece of merch I want to get my hands on there.
There you go.
We'll send you. You just say the word, we send it to you. It's on us.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
For being such an
And
extraordinary
we still owe your dad for
contributor.
sauce way
Absolutely.
back in the day, too.
Sal
so.
Corrado sent us crates of sauce back in the day. We called that the first real big test for the Canucks last night. Their schedule has been pretty tame to date. Minnesota's a heck of a club. That was a fun hockey game. That was big boy hockey. What did you make of it?
That's a great way of describing it. Like Minnesota, they're big, they're heavy, and they don't open it up to you. Like that's one thing about them. Like they really make you kind of have to slog through the mud, if you want to call it that, in any given night. And like they've been so consistent at doing that. And I think the big thing that jumps off the page for me is end of a road trip where the first game of that trip against Ottawa feels like it was honestly a year ago. Like that's how long it feels like these guys have been on the road. So they've been grinding, battling. They've had to play 3 overtime games in a row. And to have that kind of effort against a team like Minnesota that just makes so many different parts of the game hard on you, I think that speaks volumes to the resilience of the group, how much they kind of care and work for each other. And like that's a road trip where, guys get on the plane after that last game and they're feeling pretty good, saying like, we took care of business and we did exactly what we had to do. And I think a lot of guys would feel really accomplished about that. And as far as like who sticks out, I'm sure you guys are having the conversation around Elias Pettersson, but like it's been a bit of a slow build, if you want to call it that, but it doesn't feel slow anymore because he's kind of found it after a slow start to the season.
We've been praising the third period in particular because they get 16 shots in the third when, you talk about the length of the road trip. That is the final period of a 6-game. Like, this is where you should be on fumes, and they actually pushed back against the home team and had them on the ropes a little bit. But I also want you to bring up the special teams, which operates as it should, like as a head coach would want it to. The power play for the entirety of the trip was at 30%, the penalty kills at 80%. Like, that's just what it's supposed to do. And in a game like that where offense is going to be hard to come by, you need a power play goal to make it work, and they get that as well. I mean, after years where it seems one of the two special teams has really let them down, it seems both are in a, if not league leading position, they're in a decent spot. Like, there's confidence in both of those special teams.
Well, the first thing I'd say is you don't have to lead the league in penalty kill and power play. You have to be in the top third, really, for it to honestly say that it's effective and it's not going to lose you a game on any given night. So that's, they're in good spots. The power play is different without JT Miller. And now it feels like, Quinn Hughes, obviously everything goes through him and we know what he can do. But it feels like Pettersson touches the puck more now without Miller on this unit. And, it's obviously good for Pettersson. The more puck touches, skilled guys, like, they just feel like they're more confident the more they touch the puck, and the more they're able to work through that. But like, I think that dynamic with Pettersson and Hughes right now is really working for them on the power play. Just knowing that, like, it doesn't have to get shared as much throughout the rest of the group. It can go through those two guys and then someone else. It's almost like it feels like they're almost in unison together on the power play, which of course JT Miller makes your team better. Ultimately will make your power play better because he's that good of a player. But I think for right now, just kind of those two guys being on the same page is notable, and it's working. And I think the other thing that comes to mind is like Jake DeBrusk does a good job of just being in front of the net. Like, he's always in and around there. That's not even just on the power play. That's at 5-on-5. Like, but yeah, I think, the power play doesn't have to be top 2 in the NHL. It has to be in the top third. And same goes with the penalty kill. And both have been, good aspects of the team season so far.
109-point team last year. Are there any such things as moral victories this season?
For the Canucks, I think there's always, like, I'm not going to say there's always a moral victory, but I think there is sometimes. Like, they're very much in the business of, we need to win games, we need to accumulate points, and we're trying to be on the precipice of going for long playoff runs. But I think, from a player's point of view, if you take away any kind of moral victory, it makes a long season even longer, and it just makes it harder for you. Like, I think sometimes there's going to be nights where you need to go into the room and say, okay, at least we did this, and we can kind of cling on to that. And, that gives me a little solace in that we're doing something right. And the process we have is good, or maybe we just focused on that one thing. Like, maybe there was a game where we probably knew we weren't going to win, but we knew if we played in the third period and did these couple things, we could say, okay, that's something we can take with us, into the next one, or feel good about in the room, or just give ourselves our own little internal win. So I think, if you're looking at it from a fan's point of view, it's going to be hard to say, well, moral victories, whatever, like, you're supposed to be a good team. But I think for players, you have to, like, it keeps you sane every once in a while to say, okay, certain aspects got out of hand, but we managed to keep this that we focused on in our grasp. And that will, like, I just think that helps everyone's mindset.
The Canucks are 3-4-3 against teams on playoff spots right now. They're 3-5-1 against playoff teams from last season. How much does quality of opponent and record versus the better teams come up in an NHL dressing room?
I think there's always a heightened awareness around when, like, a big boy team is in town, especially when it's got, like, star players. Like, I always found, like, star guys got the meeting's attention, because if it was Washington, it was, here's what we're doing on the penalty kill, but also here's what we're doing with Ovechkin. You played against, I don't know, you played against Crosby or McDavid. Here's what we're doing, but here's what we're doing also against Crosby or McDavid. So there's that aspect when the star players, like the really big boys, are in town. when it's just a good, well-rounded team, you also have to keep in mind, like, there's so much that's in flux in a regular season with all these rosters, right? Like a good team can come into town, or a bad team can come into town, and they're missing certain guys, or they're on the scheduled loss, or they're on the back-to-back. So at the end of the year, you look back and say, okay, our record was 3-4-3 against playoff teams, or, whatever. That's not going to be the record at the end of the year. But you look back and you have to kind of treat every game like its own little case study, because what they have going around it. But I do believe that, the games against good teams always have that heightened awareness. But I think it's the star players that bring it out more than just the good team. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some guys before a game that don't even really look at the standings and just, hey, we're playing Minnesota. You have this picture in your mind of what Minnesota can be. I bet there's guys that didn't even know Minnesota is the best team in the NHL right now, because some guys just don't pay attention to the standings, and they just pay attention to the players and what they have to do. Like, that's the reality.
How much longer can they do this with these injuries? Are we starting to see the difference between a deep team? Like if the Wild lost Kaprizov, how much worse are the Wild? I think pretty significant.
Very much.
The Canucks lose Hronek and Miller, and yet, we can still list off like a bunch of trophy caliber players on the team, right? So the Canucks, believe it or not, despite not being a top 3 team in the NHL, it feels like their star depth is good enough that, while on a lot of teams you'd say you can't take away 2 star players and survive very long.
It's 3, Demko.
And Demko too.
Yeah, and Demko, 100%. And also think about the start of the year for Pettersson was slow. Not saying that you were playing without him, but you were playing with him at, 75%. He still might not be 100% healthy. And you've missed Brock Besser for portions of this year. And it does speak to the depth that this group has. And listen, we know it's a deep group, because someone like Phil DiGiuseppe is playing in the minors this year because there's no room on the wing, even though Tocchet really likes him as a player. And that's the reality. I think on the blue line, the depth is more tested than it is up front. And someone asked me the question this week. We were doing SportsCenter hits, and someone asked me the question, is Quinn Hughes the least talked about superstar in Canada? And I right away I said to the guy, and I see Sekeres losing his mind right now, because I said in Vancouver they talk about him. But you guys don't talk about him enough. And so then, let's say, who are the superstars in Canada? We know it's McDavid, Matthews, Draisaitl. After that, who are the superstars? Quinn Hughes. Is Pettersson a superstar? He's a star. No.
Not quite.
Miller's not a superstar. He's a star. Superstar, I think that's the 4 guys. Right? So
McDavid, Draisaitl, Matthews, Hughes. Yep.
Hughes.
So yeah, I can abide that. Mm-hmm.
So Hughes is in the same tier of defensemen that McDavid, Draisaitl, and Matthews are in as forwards. I think that's pretty fair to say, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
And I would make the argument that this is going to be possibly the most impressive stretch of hockey in Quinn Hughes' career, based on what's going to be going on around him. You don't have Filip Hronek now. He's having the surgery. You don't have the same decor that you had last year. So now you're trying to put Tyler Myers up there, and he hasn't had the year he had last year. And now you don't have Miller, you didn't have Besser, and Quinn Hughes is going to be asked to do so much more on a team that's expected to win. And it's like, how is that not that is a superstar? The guy's a superstar carrying that decor right now.
Well, and I'm losing my shit, Frank, because first of all, what more does he have to do to get talked about more broadly?
He has to play at 4 p.m. Eastern.
That's the only
4 p.m.
thing.
4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he has to do.
Yeah. So, for me, he's in a tier of 2. Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes. Pick your best defenseman in the world, but it's one of those 2 guys. Secondly, I think you can argue, and this is probably also time zone related, I think Jerome McGinley, when he was in Calgary at the height of his powers, and Erik Karlsson, who was at the height of his powers in Ottawa, got more run than Quinn Hughes gets nationally. And that bothers me somewhat because if you purport to cover the National Hockey League, you should be paying more attention. So God bless you, Frank, for keeping the Quinn Hughes
right in there.
flame going.
I got to jump right in because you said Erik Karlsson just now. And that's the first name that came to mind when I was doing this conversation. And I thought to myself, we talked about Erik Karlsson so much, right? Like over the years, playing in Ottawa, the playoffs, all that kind of stuff. And for good reason. Like Erik Karlsson, unbelievable offensive talent. Like just not everyone could do what he did. I think Quinn Hughes is a much more well-rounded defenseman than Erik Karlsson ever was in his prime. So yeah, like we should be talking about Quinn Hughes way more. And I think I still stand by, like with Hronek out, and you can call it what it is, but they don't have, that decor doesn't have the same chops it had last year, although there's a lot of the same guys. I think what Quinn Hughes is going to have to do for the next little while here, and what he's already done in the 4 games that Hronek has been gone, has been incredibly impressive.
The fact that Hughes doesn't get the bump of playing for Team Canada also, with that analysis of Canadian media, also probably hurts him just a little bit. But the West Coast thing is a big one. We went down the rabbit hole on this, I don't know, a few weeks back, just off the air. But do you know how many points Anze Kopitar has? He's almost got 1,300 points in the NHL.
Right.
Like when's the last time you heard anybody talk about Anze Kopitar?
Anze Kopitar, he's an immediate Hall of Famer.
He just continues. If you looked at his DB page, I don't have it up right now, but I looked at it in the summer. It's just like, there's another 70 points. There's another 75 points. The guy's in his like mid to late 30s. Like, it's no big deal. He just keeps doing it.
But the guy from Slovenia is going to be amongst the top 20 goals or point getters of all time in this sport. It's absolutely unbelievable.
And
but
he can walk in Manhattan Beach and probably just no one will bother him. Right?
That's it.
Yeah.
I did want your 2 cents on how you think the Canucks defense blue line is holding up without Hronek, what you've thought of the pairings and the way they've gone about managing the Hronek absence.
Listen, I think they've done a good job managing it. Obviously, when you lose Hronek, you lose someone who, yes, moves the puck, but defends at a high level against good players very often, and a guy who has a little jam to his game for sure. So you're losing a lot when you don't have Hronek, and I think putting Myers with Hughes is the thing that makes the most sense. And then just asking everyone to just do their jobs, to the best of their abilities. I think they've handled it really well. Like to do, the Sabres win, the Red Wings win, and then the game to salvage a point against the Wild last night, where I know the Wild are not, the most potent offensive team, but give them the opportunity and they will expose you. Like they have one of the best offensive talents in the league. So I think for the focus for the decor right now is just, let's be sound defensively. Let's not, take too much risk. Let's not try and open things up. And Quinn Hughes is going to be the guy that takes on the puck moving responsibilities, which is always the case. And just be steady. And I think they've accomplished that so far. And they haven't really stuck out as being a significant weak spot.
Although, to be honest, I thought I noticed Carson Soucy the most I've ever noticed him this season, and it's because I thought he was a little bit more involved. He wasn't defaulting to safe. I felt like Carson Soucy was a little bit more active, and I wonder if just everybody's elevating just a little bit, and it might just be the smelling salt that a guy like Soucy, and to a degree that Myers maybe needed on this season.
Well, and Soucy, last year, it was more noticeable for me. Like he's pretty smooth and he's pretty efficient with the puck. Like they kind of stumbled out of the gate, Soucy and Myers. But I think I would say it more looks like the guy last year with Soucy, where there was a little more patience, just a little more poise and
a little more savvy. Yeah.
Yeah. Just didn't feel like he had to just get it away. Like felt like he could just execute the proper play more than anything, which is great because that's Like at his best, that's what he does. Plus he defends really well, and he's like a sturdier defenseman. So I know I agree. Like I think everyone just has to kind of not put themselves in a box, but just understand that like there's a foundation that lives for how to defend well. And let's focus on that first and then build the rest out from there without Hronek.
And how about Noah Juleson with the first scoring chance of the day that for some reason Juleson at the top of the crease with the redirect just wide. Like everybody's doing things to try and get this team across the finish line without Hronek.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Frank, I have a project for you.
Okay.
I need you to send an email, convene a meeting. Duffy, Retta, Button, McLennan, O'Neill, Onright, anyone who's going to be talking hockey on TSN, and bring them the gospel of Quinn Hughes.
Well,
all right, gentlemen, we have to talk more about Quinn Hughes out in Vancouver.
So I'll tell you this. So when I do Jay's show, we're sitting there late. Like Jay's show goes live at midnight, right. But we will oftentimes, like if the Canucks are the topic, we'll let the Canucks game finish, and then we'll either like retape or just kind of tape it for the morning loop. So we get Canucks content in there because Jay knows the brilliance of Quinn Hughes, and for his show, he wants it in there. Not saying the other guys don't, but that's like the nature of the show being on at that time. Like Jay,
and he's got a little more creative sway on his show than other ones do. So
just let him know we will not rest until all of those guys are talking Quinn Hughes on the regular. Frankly, we won't be satisfied until Bob Weeks, Jack Armstrong, and Vic Rauter are talking Quinn Hughes.
You're going after all the Hall of Famers. All the Hall of Famers there.
Hello.
My God. No one's safe. No one's safe today.
Awesome stuff, Frank. Thank you for the visit. Until next week.
See ya.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Ben Moss. Ben Moss, proudly Canadian-owned, operated, history dating back more than a century. 5 locations here in BC, including Coquitlam Center, Willowbrook, and Langley. Committed to customer satisfaction, they have a large selection of Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, mine diamonds with payment plans to suit your needs. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. Well, in my 17 years here in Vancouver covering the BC Lions, I'm not sure there has been a single individual who has devoted more blood, sweat, tears, soul to the organization while he was with it than our next guest, the former quarterback of the BC Lions and the new head coach of the team. Delighted to welcome Buck Pierce back to the program. How you doing, fella? Congratulations. Good to see you again.
Hey, thank you so much. It's great to be back. I couldn't be more excited. Still a little bit surreal right now, but, ready to get working. Did
you miss us? Did you miss this town? Did you miss this franchise?
I did. Absolutely. It really never leaves you. It's been about, 20 years since I stepped off a plane, into this, facility for the first time as a rookie in 2005. And, to have it come full circle, it's just, an amazing feeling. And, to have this opportunity, it's always something that was in the back of my mind, hopefully, work my way back here at some point in whatever capacity. And, just thrilled to be the new head coach.
10 years as a coach in Winnipeg, if I've got that right. I mean, that's a long time of an apprenticeship, if you will. Did you think it would happen sooner, a head coaching opportunity? Is this about the timeline you figured it would take?
You know what? It really was never a timeline. When my playing career ended, I had an opportunity to step into coaching. And, for me, it was just about being around the game, helping players achieve their goals, working towards championships. And, the natural progression of a coach, it just happened to be in Winnipeg. I love my time in Winnipeg. I met my wife in Winnipeg. My kids were born there. I learned about myself there. And, it was a great opportunity, for me just to grow as a person and as a player. So, coming back to BC, obviously it's extremely special to me. it was home. It's where, I cut my teeth in the CFL, and, still a little bit surreal, but, just very grateful, for the opportunity.
Coaching was always going to be a thing for you, though, right? I mean, we could tell. I don't know if you could tell, but we could tell from the outside and covering you that, oh, this was a guy that thinks the game. This was a guy that, he's strategizing. When did you decide, I think I'm going to be a coach?
Well, it's I think you're right, Blake. It was something I always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was, football's who I am. It's in my DNA. I think, ever since I started playing football, I want to be around the game, and, to have the opportunity to step in and, learn from, great people and just be a sponge. It was ideal for me. The moment I decided to hang up the cleats, it was time to put a coaching hat on and just, continue to learn. And like I said, there was no, it wasn't, hey, I have to be a head coach at this point. It was just about learning, growth, being around players, and, it's been a wild ride. It's been great. I love my time in Winnipeg, and excited to get my time started here in BC.
We've joked that the Bombers have become Everest for the Lions. Now that you're back in the den, do you have any secrets? Do you have any ways of getting BC over the Winnipeg hump, Buck?
Well, I think it's just, developing our philosophy and who we're going to be, right? I mean, we have a vision, we have a plan on what, it takes to win, and, we're going to implement that plan. Right. We need to, continue to define who we're going to be and chase that standard. Right. It's not about, being Winnipeg. It's about being the BC Lions and what's our vision going forward.
Tell us more about the philosophy, about the plan. What's Buck Pierce football going to look like?
Well, as much as the game has changed over the years, and, everybody talks about, schemes changing and philosophies changing, football's football. It's doing the little things right all the time. It's having an identity of being a tough team, mentally and physically. That's where it starts. When we got to be tougher. And that's what we're going to pride ourselves on, is doing the little things right. Being detailed and improving our toughness.
If you were tougher than you. Man, I remember that halftime with the bloody mouth, Buck, and you stood up and you challenged your team. You remember that game where you were getting beat up and you challenged your teammates, look in my mouth, look at this blood, and everybody responded to that. How are you holding up physically after your playing career? How's the last 10 years been for you after playing the game with such physicality? I'm
doing good. I'm doing great. My kids keep me young. So I'm chasing them around. I'm doing well. A lot of people ask me, would I change, the way I played or anything about my career? And I think they're a little, taken back by my answers at times, because I wouldn't. I believe the game is, supposed to be played a certain way. And, it probably, shortened my career by a couple of years. But, my beliefs in how the game was supposed to be played, no matter what position you play, it's all out all the time. And, that's the way I played it. And that's the way, that I coach and I live my life.
Mike, how good are the BC Lions right now? And is that even an answer that you can give, given that long list of free agents that we know that is out there as well? In this league, we know, worst place team can turn around pretty darn quickly. But, first place team has trouble staying up there because there's a siphoning of talent, often displacing of talent every single year. Do you know how good the BC Lions can be next year yet?
Well, I think everybody's at the same point right now, in the offseason. Offseason just started. There's a lot of work to do. I think today's a big step for our organization, and we're going to get started on that process and, building what 2025 looks like right away. Right. So, there's some steps to it. Obviously, I think there's some, great foundational pieces here in place. But, I think it's going to start with us, with our vision of the club and how we build it. So I think it's too early to tell. But our expectations and what we're going to be and, what we want to be are going to be extremely high.
As a quarterback yourself, can you unlock Nathan Rourke into the MOP caliber player that we think he is?
Well, I think we're gonna build this around Nathan. I'm a big believer in, continuing to build, on player strengths, and Nathan has a lot of them. You see it, you see what he can do on the football field. You guys have obviously followed his journey extremely close. I've watched from afar, and just being able to talk to him and continue to spend time with him. He's a elite person, obviously a great talent, and he can do a lot for you, right? So we're going to make sure that we put him in the best position possible to go ahead and succeed.
I understand you're meeting with him here soon. What are you going to tell him? What's your pitch? What are you saying to Nathan?
I just want to get to know him. I just want to get to know him. Yeah, I mean, this is a people business, and I just want to get to know Nathan, the person, start that relationship, and for me, that's the greatest thing about being a coach is getting to know these guys and being around them and being a part of their lives and helping them grow. Whether it's in their personal lives or on the football field. So I'm just excited to be around them.
A couple serious dudes, a couple serious quarterbacks. You guys gonna nerd out on quarterbacking and just like get into the weeds? Because I could see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no coincidence that I think we're going to be brought together because we both feel the same way about the game, and I think our beliefs align. So I can definitely see us nerding out a little bit.
Yeah, not hard to see that. What are your thoughts on coordinators here, Buck?
Well, we've now that we've after a day we've already had some discussions on some things. We're going to continue to have those discussions as a group, and move forward. I think there's a lot of good candidates out there, and we'll, that process, has started and will continue to go.
Tell us about your relationship with Ryan Rigmaiden and how all this came together. You must have known him from way back the Winnipeg days, or do you even go back further than that?
Yeah, I met him in Winnipeg. His time when he spent, in Winnipeg, and just, I think our beliefs and how we see players, how we see the game playing, how we view the sport, how we look at the CFL. I think our visions really align in that aspect. So yeah, we've had a relationship over the years, and we've kept in touch, and I couldn't be more excited for him when he got the job, and it was a great process for me to go through, and excited about the direction.
Well, I'm sure you want to create better memories yet here in the head coaching position, but when you think back on your time as a Lion, what stands out? What are some of the moments that you remember fondly?
I think the teammates. I think the teammates that we had. Some of those guys in the locker room. The relationships that were formed. Obviously, there's some things. Just about the community. And getting out in the community as a player, supporting minor football, building the brand, was amazing. I think, obviously, we won a lot of football games, and, people look back on those times, won a Grey Cup in 2006, but, just, being around a group of players that, were driven, we were focused. We knew how to win, and that was, really the start of my process as a coach was, all right, these guys know how to do it. Wally put us in position to be successful. We had great veteran leadership around us. I learned from, a great quarterback in Dave Dickinson. So, the pieces were in place.
Yeah, I was going to say, Blake, you talk about nerding out on quarterbacking. He arrives, you got Dickinson and Printers here as he continues. Jarius joins, and then Travis Lulay. Boy, it was some pretty good quarterback rooms back then. Yeah, some pretty good discussion. You could learn a lot listening to all those lines from your era. Buddy, we're delighted to see you back in town. Congratulations on the posting. We look forward to next season already. Thanks for the time here, Buck.
Thanks, Buck.
Hey, thank you, guys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center, where, if you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, make a staycation out of it. Book your stay at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Tell them that Matt and Blake sent you. Ask for the exclusive Secure some price rate. Some blackout date supply based on availability. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at securesomeprice.com. All of it's the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
I have a Great Clips mailbag coming up on Friday, so
yeah,
a chance to get your takes on the show. We'll get to a few of those on the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Some really good, thoughtful answers actually on yesterday's poll question. So we just finished with Buck Pierce, and the CFL has released its list of free agents. And as we know, these are now very lengthy lists. A lot of players opt for one-year deals. And as we know, the BC Lions have a couple of big ones in receiver Justin McInnes and defensive end Mathieu Betts. In fact, both of those gentlemen appear on the TSN list of the best Canadian free agents available, and it's a pretty attractive class, including the quarterback in Edmonton, Trey Ford, who's not re-signed. Terrell Ford, the Winnipeg corner, is there. Keon Julian Grant, the Montreal receiver. David Beard and Sean McEwen, the centers in Hamilton and Calgary, respectively. Adam O'Clair, a fine linebacker in Saskatchewan, who had a good NFL bid. Royce Mechie, the safety in Toronto. And Jalen Philpott, Corey's kid, in Calgary. Here's the thing. Hard to imagine the Lions without Justin McInnes after he leads the league in receiving. Julian Grant and Philpott, though, if you can't come to a deal with him, would work as fallback options, I think. Maybe not get you the same production as McInnes, but both of them are quality players. The two centers would be an upgrade over Couture, but I'm not sure you want to spend the money for just a slight upgrade. Same with Mechie at safety. I really liked what I saw from Beaulieu, the rookie Canadian for the Leos at that spot. Ford, the corner, I mean, he helps you a lot, a ratio changer, but you sort of have to rearrange the way you do your ratio if you're going to play a Canadian on the corner. So,
Matt, it's a quarterback.
Like, to me, like, re-sign your own guys. If you can get McInnes and Betts back,
the temptation might be, though, and again, Buck is merely the coach, but he's a quarterback, and he's got a quarterback.
And he's got a Canadian quarterback.
That he wants to make sure has every, I wonder if the offensive line is.
I think they have to. They've finally found some decent American tackles in Broxton and Perkins. That's becoming a harder and harder position to fill. The NFL is hoarding those guys. There are very few NFL pass protection ready tackles coming out of the college game now because of all these different offensive schemes being run in the NCAA. But yeah, Suk Chung's a free agent. He's had a long career. He's had some injuries. I think upgrading that interior offensive line, particularly the guard spots, I think is going to be important.
Got to keep Nathan safe.
Absolutely, because you're not going to have the luxury of two great quarterbacks, which you've had for the better part of, 2 of the last 3 years. The Seahawks and Cardinals this weekend down in the desert in a big one. This from Aaron Schatz, who does NFL analytics. Hawks-Cardinals is by far the most important game of the week for the playoff picture. In our simulations, a Seahawks win would make Seattle 62% to make the playoffs, with the Cardinals at 17%. An Arizona win, it would be 71% for Arizona and just 11% for the Seahawks. I couldn't believe this when I read this. What a swing. 62% of you win, and frankly, I would have thought it higher than that. 11% if you lose, despite the fact you're leading the division by
and it's a road game. And it's a road game. Yeah. Like, you're losing a road game in the NFL is generally not verboten. Like, you're allowed to lose road games.
So just an absolutely massive one in Glendale for the Seahawks and the 12s this weekend. Buffalo, as we know, have clinched. Buffalo's clinched the AFC East for a fifth straight time. We saw the Snow Angels from Josh Allen, head coach Sean McDermott. Kansas City can clinch a playoff berth this weekend with a win over the LA Chargers. Detroit can clinch a playoff berth with a win over Green Bay on Thursday Night Football. And boy, is that an attractive-looking game. And then there are other clinching scenarios this weekend. Minnesota gets in with a win over Atlanta and losses by the Cardinals and Rams. There are other scenarios by which the Vikings get in, but that's the simplest. There are no simple scenarios for the Eagles to get in, but they can clinch a berth this weekend with a win over Carolina. You would think that that's a fait accompli, and a whole bunch of other things happening in many different concoctions.
Seahawks schedule, by the way, the rest of the way at Arizona, home to juggernauts, the Packers and Vikings. And then finishing 2 straight on the road.
Including in snowy Chicago.
Snowy Chicago and against the Rams. So, like, if you just go according to form, they can go 3-2, but all of those 3 are supposed to be on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to find a way to split those 2 at home. Got to find a way. Because you're not going to go 3 for 3 on the road.
Who are the home games against?
Packers and Vikings.
Wow.
Got to split them at least. Because, I mean, you only get 2 of the 5. If you only get 2 wins of the 5, you're at 9 wins. And that 11% starts to sound realistic.
Well, and here's the other thing, Blake. Particularly if Detroit's going to win the NFC North, and they seem a pretty good bet, there is a very good chance that you're hosting Green Bay or Minnesota in the playoffs if you win the division, if you're Seattle.
Yeah.
Because you'll likely be in that 3 seed. I suppose the NFC South could leapfrog you and you fall down to the 4 seed. But in either way, Minnesota and Green Bay look like they're going to be the top wild cards here. So,
but looking at that schedule, the best case scenario I can come up with for the Seahawks is 3-2. You have to be ecstatic at 3-2 at those 5 games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're 10-17. Like, honestly, 4-1 is folly. There's no chance they're going 4-1 with that schedule.
Mm-hmm. Who are the other games? It's Minnesota, Green Bay, Chicago, and
Rams. Finishing Rams.
Right. Okay. Well, that Rams one could be big. That's the season finale? Wow. And it's in Los Angeles.
Yeah, with TBD time, so it could be flexed up.
Yep. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results. Are you bothered by the JT Miller talk? More than 2,000 votes. What did the people say?
People said no.
They said no. Percentage?
60.
61%. Very good, Blake. And another example yesterday of asking a poll question and getting really smart, thoughtful, informed comments. Love it when that happens. Gullison. I said yes, simply because it's BS. Just a half year ago, Miller spoke passionately about how much he loved the city, the team, and his teammates, and how he wants to win a championship for all 3. Chayton. JR and Alvin tried trading him before his no-trade clause kicked in, so no, not bothered at all. If he doesn't want to be here, then see you later. No different than Kessler. But I'm sure his agents will tell Dolly it's for family reasons, LOL. Never expected him to finish his career here. Anyways, Scott, no, at this point it is fair and to be expected. Person aside, he's a valuable asset that is shelved. Pucker Glenn. Trade talk is what makes X and the world go around, regardless of who the player is. People hate it. People live for it. People make a living off it. It is what it is. Miller has been speculated in trade talks for what seems a long time now. And Colton, I'm bothered because management hasn't come out to say he's not available. I think that would help the team and Miller mentally to know that he's not in the rumor mill.
Well, and obviously that happened today, as we talked about.
Yes, finally, Rutherford came out and said something there. Errors and omissions. I have a few from yesterday's show and beyond. Chris Drury, the New York Rangers general manager, said you're living in Manhattan. He actually lives in Connecticut. He's a Connecticut guy. He stayed in Connecticut. Yeah. I said the Four Nations rosters earlier in the week said coming out Thursday. No, it's Wednesday. And then had a listener tweet at us and say Andrew Crystal, who Hockey Canada lists as from Burnaby, actually is from Vancouver. He grew up in Caristale.
Okay.
I reached out to his coach at St. George's, Mike Allen. I said, Coach, is this right? And Mike said, actually, Matt, I don't quite know. Anyways, Crystal, either way, Lower Mainland or either way.
Yes.
Right? With the other guys being from other parts of the province on the World Junior team. Wood from Nanaimo and communities up north. Anything to self-report?
Nothing.
No. Another clean sheet for Blake. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. We're live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And keep it local.